In this video, I will give you tips on playing the Marksman role. Here are 9 tips every Marksman user must know about. Threat identification. While everyone is a threat, there are heroes that stand out in certain situations. Identifying your threat is a very important step to win the game. It is usually on the draft pick where you evaluate your opponents based on their picks. The main threat to a marksman are assassins and mages. Some fighters with good mobility is also a huge threat. When the enemies pick a fighter core, you usually have an advantage because they will have a hard time in trying to kill you because fighters usually have less mobility compared to assassins. Make sure to utilize your range and not commit the mistake of shooting in front of their face, because in short range is where they are strong. You should be careful. It should be done from early to late game. When your game is tilted in the early game, you will not reach the late game. If you are picked up in the late game, your potential is useless. Because in the late game, you are the main damage output and the main target during that phase. Make sure to take extreme care because everyone will depend on you when that time comes. Repositioning. Have you experienced this on the laning phase, where you just want to clear the minions and the enemy gold laner keeps zoning you out? If you are dealing with that problem, here is the tip for you. Repositioning is when you mirror the enemy position so that the enemy will have a harder time on trying to hit you. You can come from the turret normally, or you can go out from this side. When you do this, the enemy will have to predict where you are gonna come next. This is extremely effective, especially when the enemy is putting pressure on you. There are also risks. Whenever you are doing this, make sure that you can see the enemies on the map. If not, be extra careful because it is more likely that they are waiting to ambush you. Try to last hit the minions. If you haven't watched this video, it is where I explained why last hitting the minion is very crucial. It is because you will get more gold from it. Although doing this tip will affect your farm a lot, it is advised that you should not risk your life for the sake of doing this tip. Whenever you are not able to last hit the minions, having a good distance will still give you gold and experience. Be extremely careful because dying is not worth the trade. Right timing of skills. Hiksha is the example that I'll use. Imagine if I just throw my skills without thinking. Now, imagine if I wait for the roamer to set the enemy. With one simple step of timing your skills, you just added more value to the team fight. Dealing with disadvantage. This is when the enemy is ahead in farm. They are more durable and have more damage. What I do in this situation is be passive aggressive. Being aggressive has no point because the enemy is stronger than your team in every way. I deal with disadvantages by taking advantage of the enemy's mistakes. The most common is when the enemies tower dive because they are being impatient. If the enemies know what they are doing, they will freeze the lane sometimes and ambush your team. Those are the most common traps when the enemies are ahead. So don't fall for it. Just be patient and wait for an opportunity. When you are dealing with a disadvantage, patience is the key. Dealing with advantage. This is when you are ahead than the enemies. It's either you as a marksman are fed or it's your team. When you have the upper hand than the enemy, doing most things won't be hard as long as your team have the same goal. When you have the advantage, it is good to play aggressive. Always take advantage of your enemy's weakness because when the tables turn, they will do it to you too. Also, don't be afraid to push towers, but don't tower dive recklessly. Leash when the jungler start with your side. When the jungle decides to start taking the buff on your side, leash it. It is more likely that your team will gank the XP lane first before yours. Helping it take the buff will make it faster to complete its rotation, which will also benefit you in the long run. Remember to keep your distance before the buff gets killed, so that you provide some real help. Be aware on where your teammate is. Avoid overextending when there's no one to provide backup for you. Start putting pressure on the enemy when you have teammates nearby. Help in getting the turtle when it's on your side. The first turtle will spawn first on the XP lane side, which is enough time to get more items before it spawns on your side. When that time comes, make sure to provide backup to the jungler so that taking the turtle will be easier. Also, it is better that your presence is felt whenever the enemies decides to attack your teammates while taking the turtle. Before doing this, remember to clear your lane first so that it won't be easily pushed in case the enemies decided to. Use of defensive damage items. There are times where the enemies are dealing too much damage and you are not. What's worse is you can't buy an armor because your hero needs damage. Don't worry, because we still have defensive items that adds damage. The perfect example of this is Wind of Nature, Winter Truncheon, and Rose Gold Meteor. Buy Immortality on the late game. When your game reach very late, like it's past 20 minutes, dying is the very first thing you should avoid because the team's victory is holding on to it. If you die during that stage of the game, the respawn time will be like a minute, which is enough for the enemy to push the turret. It is also the same for your enemies. That's why buying Immortality in the late game is a good idea. Immortality gives you a second chance to death. When the enemy drains your life, you will still respawn on where your body is. Also, you will be given a shield, which is clearly a second chance for you. Having Immortality doesn't mean you have to be reckless. It is just to maximize the value of your role so that you still have a chance even if you made a simple mistake. I hope you learned something from this video. If you find value in this content, make sure to let me know by clicking the like and subscribe button so that you can provide support to my channel. That's all of the tips I can give for now. Good luck in your games. I hope you get a good one.